everyone, and welcome to AEW Unrestricted, the official podcast of All Elite Wrestling. I am Aubrey Edwards. On TV, I yell at half-naked men who fight in their underwear. And this is Will Washington, who is not on TV, but is behind the scenes doing a bunch of fun creative stuff.
I have been.
Right, and it helps excel all of the half-naked people wrestling on TV. So we are working together.
We are
crazy
working.
World of wrestling.
Yeah, and I have an entire blast doing it. And by the way, I want to make sure it goes mentioned that this show, All Elite Wrestling Unrestricted, is sponsored in part by our good friends at Upper Deck. And you, my friends, can collect your favorite wrestlers in 2025 Upper Deck AEW and start your trading card collection today. Unwrap autograph, memorabilia, or premium tech inserts. Visit upperdeck.com to learn more. Yeah, that was a cool shiny one you just pulled. And you know what? What's funny is I just opened this pack here, and right off the bat, look at this. I got this Neon Monikers card, the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson.
Bryan Danielson. Oh, that's so rainbow and shiny.
Yeah, no, this is a truly premium one. I thought this card was actually really cool. And honestly, some of the better premium cards I've pulled over time is just a reminder of how cool this set is. And you can check out the 2025 AEW Upper Deck. They're so good. You know what's funny also is, lately I've been playing around. I've been resistant to AI for a very long time. But recently I started playing around with ChatGPT.
Only recently? Dude, you're missing out.
I know. I've used ChatGPT a lot for back in my programming days. I actually use it a lot. I try very much not to use it when I'm writing promos, things like that, because then I feel like I'm going to end up using it as a crutch. And then all of a sudden, there goes my job. But it's funny is I have been playing around with it because I was helping a friend with his resume the other day, and then it kept talking back to me as if, because that friend's a truck driver, and it kept talking back to me as if I was a truck driver, and I'm like, I am not a truck driver. And
please stop saying y'all.
And then it says, well, what do you do if you don't mind my asking? And I went, do you know who Will Washington from All Elite Wrestling is? And it said, yes. And then it gave me this whole long description of myself. And I go, that's me. And it goes, oh, okay, cool. I'll remember that. And then so since then, everything it's been talking to me about lately has been using wrestling references to do it. And I also think that's kind of funny. But anyway, that's been my life with ChatGPT over the last couple of days. And
I recently have been using ChatGPT to write up emails to my HOA because if there's anything that universally we all dislike is spending any time thinking about HOAs. So the more I can offload to that, the better.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. And but before we get to our guest today, I did want to make mention at the time of this recording, obviously we're coming out Thursday, May 1st, but at the time of this recording, we just had a bunch of events go on sale, and Texas is literally right around the corner. We have Dynamite that Wednesday, we have Collision that Thursday, we have ROH that Friday, and then of course we've got the big gigantic show AEW All In at Globe Life Field that Saturday. I know StarCast tickets just went on sale. Yours truly is planning a cool event that I can't wait to talk about once I've actually got more details. I'll tell you about it once the microphones go off. But yeah, there's a lot going on in Texas, so I'm really, really excited.
Well, speaking of Texas, what do we have going on today's show?
Today's guest, I am very, very excited to welcome back once again to the AEW Unrestricted podcast, the Murderhawk Monster, Lance Archer. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, guys? This is my second time to be on with you guys. Two times.
Two times.
I said that way too many times.
Yeah, I guess you're supposed to say it too, but with an echo, you could potentially say it more, so it's okay.
Okay, that works.
Right. We'll let it fly. It's wrestling. You just kind of let it happen as it is. But the last time we had you on, you were kind of on your own solo journey, but now a lot has happened since then. You're now a member, one or two, but you're now a member of the Don Callis family. Yeah. You've been teaming with Brian Cage primarily as the Murder Machines, which is my favorite tag team name ever. You've done trios with Takeshita. You've done all these sort of things. Tell us a little bit about why you initially joined the Don Callis family, because as you know, Don Callis is kind of almost the most hated man in AEW. So you've got to have a good reason for this to sort of be the positive decision.
I think you can obviously see what's going on with Don and like Takeshita and Kyle, and the trajectory that those guys have already taken off and being a part of his group. And like you said, like I was kind of on my own and kind of doing my own thing. And, Jake and I kind of run our course, I guess you could say. I was still technically with him at the time, but we just weren't doing a whole lot together. I'd kind of teamed up with the Righteous guys for a little bit there. And that was a cool combination and whatnot. But, when Don approached me about joining the Don Callis family, I was like, all right, this has got potential. I was like, he's hated more than anybody else on the roster, I think, and probably as much or more than just about anybody in the business of professional wrestling as a concern.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so when he approached me about this, I was like, okay, the potential behind this is very high. Like I said, with what's going on with Kyle, with what's going on with Takeshita, the involvements he has, the history he has with guys like Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, the list goes on and on with the potential possibilities of getting mixed up with different people at different times and in a high capacity. And like I said, love him or hate him, Don gets it done.
Well, what are you noticing is the big difference so far in having Don in your corner versus the time you had spent with Jake?
When he punches somebody, the insane reaction that people have, loving, hating his ass, that would probably be the biggest thing.
Wait, when does he punch people?
Never, Aubrey, never.
Okay, because I don't. I might have to go back and watch the tape because I don't remember this ever happening.
Yeah, go back and watch some tape, but don't watch it too hard and too closely. A lot of times you're doing your job, you're checking on me because me, little frail little old me, is possibly hurt, and you have to make sure that I'm okay in that moment. I mean, nobody should be caring about Don. You should be watching me, and that's right. I appreciate that.
Right. My optometrist also said, as I get older, my eyes are kind of getting worse. So this all kind of checks out.
Mine too.
Very much checks out.
We're checking on each other in that moment. So if you hear something, don't turn around.
I appreciate you, man.
You're welcome.
Well, and another thing, too, is that it has to be distracting having noticed over the last few weeks Don Callis impersonators showing up at ringside.
Yes, that I don't understand people's mentalities when they want to impersonate Don Callis. I mean, I guess if you just have the desire to be wholeheartedly hated by everything and everyone around you in that moment, that's something to aspire to. But other than that, I don't get it.
I don't understand. Like, just go on Twitter and say an opinion, and then immediately you'll be hated by even more people. So why would you also want to be bald with a gigantic scar at the same time? Like, this is just like, ugh. I don't like it at all.
I saw the one guy, he had the bald cap on and the scar painted in, but then he had his ponytail sticking out the back. Didn't have it completely covered up. This is like, all right.
Fully commit.
He's not full commitment. I'm sure Don didn't take too well to that either.
No, it's like the Muppets. As long as you don't see it from the back, you're okay. And then it's like the whole illusion's gone once you see it.
It's like, whose hands up what?
Excuse me? I'm already laughing way more than I thought I would during this interview. I'm so happy about this. What do you think? Because obviously Don picks a lot of different people. Like, he's recently added Rocky Romero and Josh Alexander to the group. We've seen Trent Beretta. We've seen Will Ospreay is a part for a while. Then he left. We have Mark Davis. Hobbs was a part of the group for a while. So what do you think it is that Don sees in you and what you provide to the group as a whole?
He sees the big badass monster that can come in and stomp a hole in just about anybody and everybody at any given time. And I think that's kind of been my handiwork my entire time in AEW, no matter who I've been involved with, what matches I've been involved with. Like, at any given moment, I am a threat. And I think that's what he sees in that. We do have to talk about Rocky Romero. Yes. Because Rocky has been dodging me for years and years and years. We're supposed to have a cage match, and then somehow he finagles his way into the Don Callis family. Just let Rocky know that even family fights sometimes.
Okay.
We got to get that cage match going, it sounds like.
Yeah, Will.
Wink. Speaking of cage, though, I do want to talk about the tag team. I want to talk about the Murder Machines. Because this is one of those teams that, you and Brian Cage have basically been in AEW for the same amount of time. You both came in 2020, basically within months of each other. Because you came in March of 2020. He came in May of 2020. So really, it was like a 2-month difference in the time you guys came. And there were a lot of like parallels between you guys. Where like, There was a period where you had gotten a world title match, or the TNT title match, and then he got a TNT title match, you got a world title match, he got one, and it was like there was a lot of things happening around the same time. You guys had such parallels,
Right.
but I don't think anybody had thought until we saw you guys together that this team just works, it clicks, it's magic. And it just feels like I remember from almost the first week after you guys started teaming in the office, we were all talking about, this is it. These guys are it. These guys have the potential to be the next Road Warriors. Like, just looking at these two as a team, they look like they should have been together a long time ago. How did you feel the first time it was kind of proposed to you that you would be teaming with Brian Cage?
Yeah, like you said, there's been a lot of parallels in Brian and I's path with AEW. We do have a good history around each other. We've always been cool and friends. There was almost some times when he was with Team Taz and I was with Jake that we almost did some stuff together, and then things happened, it changed, and it didn't happen. I think at one time in the past, way before all this came about, we talked about the idea of it possibly happening. It never really came to be. And then, like I said, being introduced into the Don Callis family, I was talked to about the situation with Don. And then we came in, it was like, okay, we're doing this new introduction, and Brian was included in that. And we were going to be paired together as that team. And, obviously the Murderhawk Monster and the Machine Brian Cage. So the fun, just easy addition of the names Murder Machines, it was just fun. And like I said, his style and my style are kind of different. They're kind of opposites, even though we're both big badass dudes. He is much more into the cool, crazy, high flying stuff because he's kind of carried that style of wrestling from when he wasn't as thick as he is now. And my style's just always been the big badass brute. So combining those two things with the images that we both portray, with his physical size, my physical size, his physical presence, my physical presence, and then you kind of take the best of both worlds in professional wrestling and his crazy cool athletic style and my bruiser, basher, skull, and monster style, and you put them together, and then now you've got the combination of a couple of guys that are just ready to take over the tag team wrestling world.
It's pretty great because you're both the gigantic meat wrestling style men. You both have phenomenal hair, whether it is facial hair or braids or what have you. And you're both just insanely strong.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things about working with you from especially from a ref perspective is entrances are slightly different. We're just, okay, I'm going to go right in the ring and wait for him to throw a guy over. And it's one of my favorite parts. I'm wondering, do you and Brian ever have a competition to see who can throw a guy the farthest?
No, but when he comes back, we should absolutely do that. I think there was one time, most recently in Vegas, it was a very quick, short moment. And we had 4 guys involved in the situation. And we just decided to bring all 4 of them at the same time and toss them down the ramp and toss them into the ring and toss them into each other and then toss them out of the ring when we got done. We try to make the best of every situation. And that was one of those situations where, let's not waste any time. Let's take these young men out in the most insane and fun fashion we can. And that was probably the closest we come to having a tossing competition. But one of these days that's a whole segment. Let's see how far we can toss somebody.
So fun story about that. I remember that day in Vegas, there was a group chat going on trying to figure out all of the names for lower thirds and nameplates and such. And someone asked, who are the people that are unfortunately getting pummeled by the murder machines? And then whoever it was listed 4 names. And there was a question of wait, why are there 4? And I said, because murder is in their name.
We're non-discriminatory.
Yeah, exactly. It's you murder everybody.
It does say everybody dies. So
hey, there you go.
Well, talking again about the team, you guys before Brian's injury were on a path toward potentially, challenging for the AEW World Tag Team Championship against another dominant team in AEW, the Hurt Syndicate.
Right.
And it seemed like we were right there, really close to getting to see that match, and it felt like something that a lot of people were very much into. Now, of course, timetable for Brian is up in the air. Of course, we don't really know, but thinking about kind of how close you were to potentially getting a challenge for gold again in AEW. I guess, what does that path look like for you now in having gold in your sights?
Yeah, we were extremely close. I don't know what his timetable is going to be. I think you're always aspiring to be at the top of this business, at the top of this game. So anytime there's a championship opportunity that's in front of you, you're trying to get to it. You're trying to win that title. I've had quite a few in AEW unsuccessfully. I did win the New Japan US title with Mox way back in Dallas days in early, mid 2021. So it's been a long time since I've held any kind of gold. So I'm always aspiring to get there. And yeah, it was kind of disappointing with the fact that Brian and I were that close to getting it back into a title picture. And those pesky outrunners, they took one over. I just took my attention off him for just a split second, and he rolled his big butt, his very vibrant pink and purple butt up on me and got me. So, and then they had their title match. They didn't win the titles. Hurt Syndicate is a very powerful team. I don't see them losing anytime soon. So my hope is that when Brian does come back, when he's fully, recovered from his injury, that they are still the champions and we still have a chance to go after him because they like to hurt people. Well, so do we.
Yay. Oh my God. I love this. Oh, this is so good. Okay. I've got more questions coming up specifically about Texas, but we got to take a quick break when we come back here on AEW Unrestricted. AEW Unrestricted, Aubrey, Will, Lance. We're talking to Lance Archer, the Murder Machine, one of the newest members of the Don Callis family. Oh my God, his hand's coming at me. I'm going to die. You had mentioned very quickly having a match with Moxley in Dallas for the U.S. Japan title with New Japan. Mm-hmm. And I know that you're from Texas. Anytime I think of Texas, you're one of the first names that pops in my mind. And I know we've got a big show coming up in Texas this July, AEWTix.com, by the way. Can you talk a little bit about what makes Texas wrestling different?
Different. I just think it has such a strong, rich history. I mean, the Von Erich's kids are with us now. They're That's still true. The ROH Trios champion with Dustin, another Texan. It's just got such a rich history in the business from the Von Erich days, the early territory days. I think for us and what it's provided, especially when we came out of the pandemic and we started traveling again, Texas was one of the highlights for the company, I think, with what we were doing in Garland and what we were doing down in Austin. Even some of the shows we did down in San Antonio, Corpus Christi, places like that. I think it's just provided always a very strong, passionate crowd of people of all different kinds because you've got a very strong luchador influence, obviously, because Texas and Mexico are so close. So that style has influenced a lot of the wrestlers that are kind of coming out of Texas, especially South Texas. But then, like I said, the history of Dallas with wrestling, with the Von Erichs and World Class and things like that. So the fact that we're bringing All in July to Texas, retrospectively, the biggest show of the year for this company, I think it's just proper that it's in Texas. We have such strong ties to the East Coast and New York and places like that. And obviously Jacksonville, because that was our home for so long. But, I think Texas is one of those places that draws people in. It's very centrally located in the United States. So it's much easier for a lot of people from every part of the country to come to. Definitely good international travel, if people are coming in from overseas and whatnot. So it's just a great central location with an amazingly strong fan base that are extremely passionate about the business. And the wrestlers coming out of Texas, I think, because there are so many wrestlers in different areas, you have to be that dog. You have to be ready to fight for your spot and for your place and to move up in this business. And there's so many good and young talent that are coming up right now that are going to be the future of the business. So for me, it's a proud time to have been with AEW, to come to Texas so many times, to be coming to Texas in July with the crazy full week we have with the 2 shows in Garland, ROH on that Friday, All In on that Saturday. Everything that we've got going on for that entire week is going to be a really cool moment for me, myself, and I think all the wrestling world.
Hell yeah.
It's interesting talking about your history in Texas. And yeah, you have been that dog in Texas. It's funny, pulling the curtain back a little bit. A couple of months ago, we were doing, in the lead up to Dynasty, we had, there was a promo that Swerve had been doing against Jon Moxley. And one of the lines he had in that promo that I kind of helped craft that line was where he said, you were in Texas Death, Jon Moxley. I won Texas Death. And he kind of says to me, he's like, Mox won Texas Death. I'm like, no, Lance Archer
No,
beat
he
him in
didn't.
Texas Death.
Yes, word.
Very,
Want to fight?
very memorably.
Very memorably. Like, no, Jon Moxley lost to Lance Archer in Texas Death match. And
Pulling back the curtain, that doesn't happen a lot. So
yeah, but that was a moment, and that was especially that was one of the first Dynamites back on the road after the pandemic. That was such a big moment. I think kind of going off the air there. I don't think any fan saw that coming in that moment, and John didn't respond to the. To 10, all of a sudden, there's Lance Archer standing tall as the new IWGP United States Heavyweight Champion. And what was interesting there, too, was the fact that, you had such a history in New Japan at that point.
Right.
But it had been a minute. And so there was kind of this thought of, okay, maybe I could see him winning, but at the same time, he's not in New Japan anymore. And then all of a sudden, Lance Archer wins. And again, like I said, it's one of those things that kind of speaks to some of the moments you've had in AEW that kind of stand above all. And you, like I said, you got the rare victory over Jon Moxley.
Right. Not a lot of people have beat John. So, John's been pretty tough in all of his time in AEW. So to be one of those guys, and you said he didn't beat the 10 count. Well, he was stuck to a table that he'd just gone through with barbed wire wrapped in it. He wasn't getting up very quickly at any time soon.
No.
Yeah, look, for me, that was such a really cool moment. Like I said, there's been ups and downs. There always is in the business of professional wrestling. And that was definitely one of my highest, if not my highest time with AEW. And so like earlier, when you asking, do you aspire for other opportunities at Gold in AEW? Absolutely, because you always want to get back to those high moments. And I think the one thing that I can say I've always done is I've pushed through, I've persevered, I've never given up. And to know that I can achieve those moments, beating the caliber of guys like Jon Moxley, I always believe in myself. And I think because of those moments, regardless of my more recent history, I think I'm still a threat at any given moment in any given time. People still believe in the Murderhawk Monster as somebody that doesn't matter who I step in the ring with, whether it's Swerve, whether it's Moxley, whether it's Adam Page, whether it's Copeland, whether it's anybody from a roster that you would normally think, all right, they're going to beat the Murderhawk Monster. Well, there's always a little bit of doubt from everybody in that moment, because they know that if I want to and I want to snap, I can snap their neck, take their title, and be the guy that's on top.
Everybody dies. Like it's well known.
And everybody dies look, I remember, I have watched Lance Archer dearly your entire career. I've watched you going all the way back to seeing Lance Hoyt on my TV on a regular basis. I watched the Rock and Rave infection. Like, I have watched your career. But does he have it? Does he actually have it? He has it. There we go. Nothing popped me more than seeing Guitar Hero. Yeah, here we go.
Oh wow, look at this hat. Oh my God.
No, I watched this man's whole career, but meeting you in person was the first time I was reminded of the fact that this man is 6'8". Like, this man could crush me. Like, what are we doing here? And so I think it is a reminder that everybody dies pretty reasonably when you think about who Lance Archer is and how the stature of Lance Archer.
It's not to be mistaken as somebody that you can easily get over on.
Yes, everybody. There always has to be a fight when it comes to Lance Archer, and
I appreciate that you've paid attention. You've watched me my whole career. I hope you haven't been disappointed in what you've seen, and I hope you've been entertained at different aspects and different reasons, whether it was playing the Rock and Rave infection or the Murderhawk Monster and trying to put everybody's tongue down their throat. I don't know.
Speaking of career, I mean, you've had a very, very long and awesome career, multiple different places. We've touched a little bit on sort of your New Japan Association and winning the U.S. title against Jon Moxley. The association with like Will Ospreay in the Don Callis family, and I know he's not there anymore, but you two both had a number of matches over in New Japan. And it kind of got me thinking, like, now that we're doing sort of more work with New Japan, we have more of their talent coming over more regularly. We obviously have Forbidden Door. You were a part of the inaugural Forbidden Door back in June in 2022 United Center. Is there any sort of thing that you've taken primarily most from your time in Japan that you sort of applied to the Lance Archer you are today?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about wrestling style, I think, what you learn a lot of in Japan is because of the language barrier. Professional wrestling does have kind of a universal language. You know how to hit somebody, you know how to kick somebody, you know how to throw somebody, you know how to, be thrown, whatever the case may be. But the one thing that it taught me the most, I think, was simplifying and being impactful. It's taking an offense that I can do that makes people believe in that moment that I'm really knocking their teeth in, that I'm really kicking their nose off their face, that I'm really picking them up because I am and throwing them as far as I can because I do.
Because you are.
Yeah. And I think what my time in Japan taught me was to take all that, because sometimes, especially with what we do in the style that AEW presents, especially with guys, when you talk about Will Ospreay or all the amazing luchadors that have been coming in, it's very quick, it's very high paced, it's high action, it's a lot of things. I've never necessarily been that, but I can compete with that. You're talking about my history with Will Ospreay. A lot of people come back to me and they always bring up Will and I's G1 match that just happened to be in Dallas, Texas back in 2019. And it's one of those things where, like even most recently when I wrestled Kevin Knight, it's like these are the young and upcoming who are just amazing in what they do. And then I go out there and I punch him in the teeth and everybody goes, oh my God, he just knocked his head off. But the combination of the two styles and my ability to still keep up with guys of the caliber of the Will Ospreays, like Kevin Knight, who just the other night, and things like that, I think that's what makes me fun and special for our audience, is the fact that, they like this crazy, amazing, high flying, high, action style. And then they like what I do when I come in and make people go, oh my God, he just murdered that guy. And then being able to keep up and have that mix and match so well, I think that's what makes it fun for our fan base.
Well, speaking of our fan base, one of the things that our fan base has kind of organically created, shout out to Big E, over the last couple of years, is kind of the unofficial meat division of AEW. And you've been kind of a part of that. And as soon as you hit the ring, as soon as we see Big Bill hit the ring, as soon as we see Powerhouse Hobbs, any of those names, crowd gets into meat mode. They start chanting meat. They want to see more meat. What are your thoughts on being a part, or being considered a part of the meat division in AEW?
I think it's awesome because I think it gives us kind of our own platform. We're always considered like the super heavyweights or whatever you want to call them, but giving it the name like meat, something that the fans can really dig their teeth into, to say the least. No pun intended. When they start chanting meat, meat, meat every time we're crashing into each other. It kind of really started to come about when Sting had his retirement show, and we were supposed to have the Meat Madness match, but ultimately it turned into the All-Star Scramble. But then there was still that moment where you had like Brian Cage before he and I were together, Will Hobbs, Wardlow, myself, and we all just started running into each other as hard as we could. And the crowd was just there for it. They were chanting meat, meat, meat. And I think they wanted more meat. Obviously, we had a lot more guys in the match and things got moved around and we got going in different directions. But I think it's one of those things that I think our fan base really enjoys, the big, bad dudes running into each other as hard as we can, punching each other in the face as hard as we can, and just kind of hearing that meat hit each other in the face.
I will say that as the resident vegan, I am a huge fan of the meat division.
It's all the meat you can eat, Aubrey, in this situation.
Oh my God, I love me some meaty men. I'm just gonna put that out there. All right, we got to take another quick break here on AEW Unrestricted, but more with Lance coming up. Stay tuned.
AEW Unrestricted. It's Aubrey and Will. We're talking with the Murderhawk Monster, Lance Archer. And as I mentioned before the break, I talked about the fact that I've been watching this man nearly his whole career, to the point of where I started during the break thinking about very online. You had to be really online at the time, but as you were really starting to take off, as people were really starting to notice you, the internet wrestling community in like the mid 2000s really developed the term Hoytamania. Because as Lance Hoyt, you were running wild per se, and it was like the fans like really almost every internet wrestling community was like, "Oh, we are in on Hoytamania. Hoytamania is running wild." It was a lot harder, I think, at the time to acknowledge internet fans back then because social media wasn't all that prevalent. But what was that like for you, knowing that was happening and eventually getting to bring it on screen?
It was really cool because it happened because of the fans. It wasn't something that we created. We didn't come up with the name, coin the name. The fans did. There was actually a group of fans, which I got accused of taking out to eat. And I always say, I was like, do you realize how little I was getting paid by TNA back in the
day? First thought I had, I was like, no, you can afford that.
There's no way I'm taking 15 people out to eat every night just so that I can get myself over. I mean, that would be kind of ingenious if you had the money and the ability to do so. But at the same time, they were the ones that I think they just adopted me as their own as we came into the Impact Zone there in Orlando because it was all fresh and new. I'd like to believe that they saw the passion that I put into it back then, and just kind of where I had been and where I was going. Initially I'd come in with Kid Cash of Dallas, and then I kind of disappeared. Kid Cash was doing his own thing. They randomly brought me back and had me do my real name, Lance Hoyt, because Dusty Rhodes said, listen, we're going to call you Lance Hoyt because it's a good wrestling name. And I said, all right, cool. Can I introduce myself as Lance Hoyt? Said I'm tired of being, a gimmick, a character, whatever. But Lance Hoyt, that's who I am. And he goes, yeah, that'd be nice if you were selling out 20,000 seat arenas, but you're not. So we're just gonna do it. We're just gonna do it subtly, baby, subtly. But
subtly.
He said we're gonna do it subtly, and I said I'm on TV tonight. He goes, yes. I said, all right, cool. So, that was kind of how Lance Hoyt was born. But then as far as the Hoytamania was concerned, like I said, our fans who were there every week or every other week, whatever it was when we were coming to Orlando, they were front and center. They were making T-shirts. I still probably have a T-shirt somewhere buried away. They made signs and stuff like that to the point where because they were all sitting front row that they would be told, hey, you've got to put your signs down because they would have the Hoytamania spelled out on cardboard.
That, yeah.
So it would be all across and in front of people's faces. And like I said, because it happened organically, I think it made it more fun and more special in that moment. And I always said, I wish TNA would have capitalized on it a little more than they ever did, but it is what it is. And like I said, for me and my time in the business, whether it's, the early days, then I think Facebook was around, but for the most part, or, MySpace, maybe even that far back, who knows? But
mid 2000s, it was still MySpace because I remember I was in undergrad and we couldn't get Facebook because it was still tied to colleges.
Yeah. Oh, see, we were talking about this on message boards. This is what I distinctly remember was being on the message boards and we're like, hey, Hoytamania, man, got to get there. That's where the discussions were happening with people who were organizing it. No, this was absolutely not Lance himself organizing this with fans. It was people on message boards discussing, hey, there's another taping coming up this week. We got to make sure we get these signs. We got to make sure everybody it was organized, but it was organized organically online. And that to me was a precursor to some of the organic online rises we've seen over the years.
Oh yeah. It was a lot of fun, and I was slightly younger back then and able to do things like springboard Van Terminators across the ring and things like that. So I was able to give those adoring fans a little more to cheer for back then by doing crazy stuff like that. So like I said, it was a really cool moment in my time in the business as far as TNA was concerned. It's probably the best time that I had when I was in my early TNA days because I was there from 04 to 2009. And so, it was a really cool moment for me. It made me feel special because, like I said, it was just something that organically happened both in the Impact Zone and, like you said, on the internet. Yeah, on the internet, on the online. I kept saying inline. I'm trying to say online communities.
It's okay. It's going to happen organically.
Sooner or later, baby, organically.
Suddenly.
That's so great.
Oh my God, that's one of my favorite Dusty impressions I've ever heard. By the way, that was suddenly.
Well, everybody, I think everybody's got, especially anybody who's had to work with Dusty, has their Dusty impersonation. But what's great about it is everybody's got it as it relates to themselves because as your story is entirely unique to you. That is a story that only Dusty could have had with you, and I think that speaks to who Dusty was and the impact he had on the business. No pun intended.
Oh yeah.
And we talked a little bit earlier about the Rock and Rave infection, and I suppose I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that we actually just had a storyline that really revolved around Jimmy Rave in the robe. He was your tag partner for a good amount of time at that point. You guys were the Rock and Rave infection. Can you talk a little bit about your memories of Jimmy?
Jimmy was one of the smoothest wrestlers I ever saw in the ring. Like his ability to transition from point A to point B, move to move, place to place, and spot to spot was probably the smoothest I'd ever seen in the business. Him and I's pairing kind of just came out of nowhere. Again, I'd been with TNA for that amount of time. Vince Russo was kind of running the booking at the time. He'd known Jimmy from Christian Wrestling Federation and wanted to bring Jimmy in. Obviously, Jimmy had his ties with ROH and things like that. I had been doing the thing with Christy Hemme and the Voodoo Kin Mafia, or BG James and Kip James, or Billy Gunn. And so it kind of morphed into the situation where like we became that team because I turned on VKM and started going with Christy, and then they brought in Jimmy, and then the Rock and Rave infection was born. And that's such a funny story too, because we literally showed up to the Impact Zone. I think we'd already done one set of tapings where we teamed, but he was just Jimmy Rave as he was, and I was just Lance Hoyt as I was, and Christy was Christy as she was. And we showed up one time, and Disco Inferno comes up to us. He goes, "Hey, you guys know about your new gimmick?" And we're all like, "Our new gimmick? What are you talking about, Disco?" And he's like, "Oh, so like, have you ever heard of the Guitar Hero?" And we're like, "I don't think I'd heard of it, but I know Jimmy had." And he's like, "Yeah, the video game guitar game." And he goes, "Yeah." And we're like, okay. And he's like, "Okay, so here's the deal. You guys all think you're rock stars, but you only play Guitar Hero." And we all went, "You're trying to murder our careers, aren't you?"
I literally know people like that in real life, though. So
oh my God. And he was like, "No, it's, they're going to give you," at that time we were doing 3 tapings, I think. And we were on all 3 tapings. We had backstage segments. We had live mic time. And I think that's when it kind of all dawned on us. We're like, okay, we went from not knowing if we were going to do anything on all 3 of these shows to now we're going to be on everything in some capacity. And then, again, we showed up with just kind of our normal thing. We're like, well, what do we do? How do we make this its own thing? And like the first time we appeared as that version of the Rock and Rave, we just kind of like jeans and tank tops on and stuff like that. By the time I think we got to the next pay-per-view that was coming up, that's when he kind of donned like the mesh shirt and the very bright, colorful pants. And then I did the kind of the Slash gimmick, like you said, with the hat and the unlit cigar or unlit cigarette, and ultimately the panties that were hanging off my tattered jeans and things like that. And, Christy, who could sing her butt off, would come out and sing as horribly bad as she could. And Jimmy would always say the wrong city, and I would ask for, a fifth of whiskey and some M&Ms, just the most ridiculous things we could do. But like I said, because all of a sudden it went from not doing anything or not knowing what we'd be doing at all to now you're on everything. And we were at the time, I think, one of the only heel tag teams. And all of our tag teams, for the most part, were baby faces, whether it was Motor City Machine Guns or LAX or, Bubba Devon and things like that. And so we were just kind of intermixed and having to fight everyone because we were kind of the only heel team that was in the company at the time. And we just got beat up by a lot of people, but it was still, we were involved in everything. So the memory of that was just really cool, and Jimmy, like I said, his style combined with my style, and then Christy and her presence and everything that went in it, it made it a lot of fun. And by the time it was over, we were probably one of the more over teams just because people were having fun watching us.
It's great. Like, people don't realize like how valuable TV time is because it's such a limited resource. So even if it's something that's kind of outside of the box that maybe you're not totally into, it's like, just take it and run with it. And if you're good at what you do, you will capitalize and just excel. Yeah. So good on you guys for like taking that and just freaking running with it. Like, hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right.
What we could either fail or succeed, and we chose all to succeed. So
Exactly. It's like the worst you can do is try, and you're in the same
Right.
spot you were in, but you have the opportunity, so you might as well.
Yeah.
So one thing before we go,
Okay.
I had a little fun game.
Uh-oh.
So you may not know this, but we are sponsored by Upper Deck,
Okay.
cool, fun trading card company, and
Yeah.
you're actually on one of these cards I have. But
Nice.
I've got a couple cards with some people from the Don Callis family. So we're going to do a little word association. I'm going to show you one of these cards, and then you tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
I don't know if I can see the cards in this little bitty screen.
I will describe them for you for our audio listeners so they know what I'm doing.
Okay, please.
This is a Konosuke Takeshita card.
Oh, I pulled the. There we
Hey,
go. I got
look
him
at
as
that,
well.
look
Look
at
at
that.
that.
The alpha.
What do you think of the alpha? Fantastic. All right. I'm going to cover up two of the people on this card, but we have a Brian Cage.
He is the machine in every sense of the word.
Literally every sense of the word. All right. I've got another one here. Mr. Trent Beretta.
Ooh, old Trent Beretta. An odd, cool cat.
That is a fantastic
Yep, that is a
explanation.
great description.
I don't think I've heard a better description of Ken. All right, last one I've got. Mr. Kyle Fletcher, the Protostar.
He is absolutely.
Oh, the old hair too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, old hair.
He oozes stardom, and I think his future is ridiculously bright. I hope I get to beat him up one day.
Right? Oh man, I hope I get to see you beat up everybody. Okay, I lied. Actually, the last one.
Uh-oh.
What about this awesome, handsome gentleman here, this Lance Archer card?
the never-ending fighter, because I'll never give up no matter what you put me through.
Hell yeah. Look at that, man. What a good way to end this freaking thing. Let's just put a pin in it. Hell yeah. Thank you so much for coming back on the podcast, Lance. This was awesome.
Appreciate you guys having me on again.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's been phenomenal seeing like your run in AEW and just all of the opportunities and seeing this new, same great Lance,
right,
but in this new version of, in one of the most hated factions of AEW. So it's a nice little whipped cream on top of the meat sundae, I guess.
It's a place to be, and it's a place to have a chance to achieve, you know?
Hell yeah. So if you don't follow Lance on Instagram, you can do Lance_Hoyt, Hoyt. And on X at Lance Hoyt, AEW, as I mentioned, AEW Unrestricted is sponsored in part by Upper Deck. You can collect your favorite wrestlers in the 2025 Upper Deck AEW Start Your Trading Card Collection today. You can unwrap autograph memorabilia, premium tech inserts. Visit upperdeck.com to learn more. You can listen to and follow this podcast, AEW Unrestricted, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the fun podcast apps, wherever you get them. You can also check out the video episode and see all of these awesome hats and Guitar Hero guitars and trading cards that we've been showing off that you've been missing out on if you've been listening to the audio version.
Why would
Just
you
go to our YouTube channel. I know, why would you miss it? Just go to the YouTube channel. Follow AEW Unrestricted. Hit the subscribe button. And are you an AEW insider? Because you can get early access and ticket pre-sales, special merchandise offers, and more straight to your inbox. You can sign up today, AEWTix.com, which is where you get all the tickets to our awesome events, which, by the way, AEW Dynamite on TBS Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. and streaming on Max. AEW Collision live every Saturday on TNT, also on Max. ROH streams every Thursday on Honor Club. I am Aubrey Edwards with my best friend, Will Washington. Thank you so much for listening to AEW Unrestricted. Peace out, everybody. Bye.